Siphiwe Mahlangu returns to the witness stand today in the 25 million rand Nulane corruption matter. The case is before acting judge Nompumelelo Gusha in the High Court in Bloemfontein. Gusha admitted a bundle of evidence handed over by the state on Monday, following objections from the counsel for the accused. 6 people and 2 companies are on trial in this state capture case. Our reporter Erin Bates is in Bloemfontein tracking that story for us. Erin, shall we begin with that bundle of evidence that was admitted yesterday? What were the issues?
Michelle, it seems the issues were the contents of that bundle, namely financial records, contracts, paperwork between the Free State government and Nulane Investments 204. That's the company represented in court by Iqbal Sharma, alleged Gupta henchman or lackey or sort of lieutenant, you could say, one of those 6 people accused in this matter. So there were some deliberations with input from counsel for the accused, who were raising questions about the veracity of some of those records which Mahlangu then testified on. And Gusha made short shrift of that, Michelle. She heard them out. She allowed for an adjournment, so counsel for one of the accused, I believe it was Saipati Dlamini, one of those Free State agriculture officials who stands accused of flouting the Public Finance Management Act, corruption and fraud. And she then sort of reconvened court and adjourned, quite the opposite, Michelle. She admitted that file into the record, and she then heard evidence from Mahlangu. And I think really there we're seeing the kind of anxieties of some of the counsel around the paper trail here, following the money, as it were, Michelle, in this case, because of course it's about connecting all of those dots in terms of the financials to not only make the argument against the accused in the case of the ID of the NPA, but also draw in the Gupta brother trio, who are still at large and not before court in this matter, but mentioned heavily in the indictment from the NPA's ID.
Erin, shall we take just a couple of steps back before we get to the issues around the witness who will be taking the stand again today, Siphiwe Mahlangu, who works at National Treasury. Before we get there, talk to us about this Nulane corruption matter and this 25 million rand.
Yes, so we have to go back to 2011-2012 and this Mohuma Mobung project in the Free State, which was a government-driven project to empower black farmers in the province, to ensure that they were given better opportunities through sponsorship and programs of the Free State government. And then what happened is that the Free State Agriculture Department decided to look into the prospect of starting a dairy. And for that, they needed to do some sort of feasibility study. So they decided to contract Nulane Investments, claiming it had international experience in doing the very thing when it barely had a paper trail at the records office for businesses and any proof that it had actually done this kind of work before. It then agreed in haste, goes the version of the ID of the NPA, to do this feasibility study. But Michelle, it didn't even do the work according to the state's case. It then subcontracted Deloitte, let me get that one again. It subcontracted Deloitte to do the very work, and that only cost them 1.5 million rand, and says the state, they pocketed the difference. And then that provided the sort of trigger, the spark, for what became the Estina Freda dairy project. The state's case is that the bulk of that 25 million rand made its way from Nulane Investments through a series of other accounts locally and abroad into the pockets of the Gupta family empire.
I imagine those implicated in state capture, in allegations of state capture, will be watching very closely.
I think so, Michelle, and that's because this is the first sort of big state capture case, the prominent state capture case of this kind, and we've heard a lot of this evidence at the Zondo Commission, which in fact the President's just signed another extension for in terms of administration. We know that Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has moved on to his work at the Constitutional Court, but there's still strings being tied up in terms of the administration around that commission, which has cost well over R1 billion. But the evidence on Freda and the Free State and this Nulane feasibility admissibility study coming up again now in the High Court in Bloemfontein. And you're right, I do think, and it's very likely, that those implicated in state capture will be watching this closely. Why? Because it's the ID's sort of pressure test. How credible is the evidence they've been able to source? Have they managed to put together a chain of evidence that proves and implicates these accused in criminal acts, in acts like corruption and fraud and breaking the PFMA? Bear in mind, Peter Tebete, the former head of agriculture in the Free State, who testified quite poorly, some might argue, at the Zondo Commission, is the first accused.
Erin Bates, thanks very much indeed for that update live to us there in Bloemfontein.